The throne room fell silent as Emperor Thexkor raised his hand. His daughter stood before him, her head held high despite the chains around her wrists. The blue glow of her skin had dimmed with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with defiance. "You have made your choice," the Emperor said, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "You refuse the alliance with Commander Draxel. You refuse your duty to the Empire." Zaraketh met her father's gaze without flinching. "I refuse to be sold like property. Draxel is a monster. He has destroyed 3 colonies and killed millions. I will not marry him." The Emperor's 4 eyes narrowed. Around them, the court members whispered among themselves. Such disrespect was unheard of. Princess Zara was the Emperor's only child, heir to the vast Velkari Empire that stretched across 12 star systems. "Then you are no daughter of mine," Thexkor declared. "You will be taken to Verdantis Prime and left there. If you survive, perhaps you will learn the value of obedience. If you do not," he paused, "then the Empire will mourn briefly and move forward." Zara felt the words like a physical blow. Verdantis Prime was a death sentence. The planet was forbidden, covered in dense forests filled with creatures that could kill even trained warriors. No one who went there ever returned. 2 guards grabbed her arms and pulled her away. She did not struggle. She would not give her father the satisfaction of seeing her fear. The transport ship was small and cold. Zara sat alone in the cargo hold, still wearing the formal robes she had worn to the council meeting. They were beautiful but useless. The silver fabric would tear easily, and the jewels sewn into the sleeves would only weigh her down. The pilot did not speak to her during the 3-day journey. When they reached Verdantis Prime, he simply opened the cargo door and gestured for her to leave. The ship hovered 10 feet above the ground. "Jump," the pilot said flatly. Zara looked down at the forest floor below. She could see thick vegetation and dark soil. Taking a deep breath, she jumped. She landed hard, rolling to absorb the impact as she had learned in her limited combat training. Pain shot through her ankle, but nothing felt broken. The ship rose immediately and disappeared into the sky. Zara stood slowly, looking around at her new prison. The forest was unlike anything she had seen before. Trees stretched hundreds of feet into the air, their trunks wider than buildings. The canopy blocked most of the sunlight, creating a dim green twilight at ground level. Strange sounds echoed from every direction. Clicks, growls, and high-pitched whistles that made her skin crawl. She tried to reach out with her telepathic abilities, searching for intelligent minds, but found only the chaotic thoughts of animals. Hunger, territory, hunt, kill. Zara began walking, though she had no idea where to go. Her ankle throbbed with each step. She needed to find water and shelter before night fell. The forest seemed to close in around her as she walked. Vines hung from branches like snares. The ground was uneven, covered in roots and fallen logs. Several times she nearly fell. Her beautiful robes caught on thorns and branches, tearing long gashes in the fabric. After an hour of walking, she heard water. Following the sound, she found a small stream flowing over smooth rocks. Zara knelt and cupped her hands, drinking deeply. The water was cold and sweet. She sat back, breathing hard, and tried to think. She had no weapons, no tools, no shelter. Her telepathic powers were useless against animals. She could manipulate energy, creating light and heat, but that would drain her strength quickly. She needed food to maintain her abilities, and she had no idea what plants here were safe to eat. A sound behind her made her spin around. Something large moved through the bushes. She caught a glimpse of scales and too many legs before it disappeared. Her heart pounded. She needed to find shelter now. Zara followed the stream, hoping it might lead to a cave or rocky overhang. Her ankle was swelling badly now, making each step agony. She wanted to cry but refused to give in to the despair that threatened to overwhelm her. As the light began to fade, she found what she was looking for. A cave entrance partially hidden by hanging vines. She approached carefully, using her energy manipulation to create a small ball of light in her palm. The cave was shallow, only about 20 feet deep. But it was dry and the entrance was narrow enough that large predators would have trouble entering. Zara collapsed against the back wall. She was exhausted, hungry, and terrified, but she was alive. For now, that was enough. She spent the first night huddled in the cave, jumping at every sound. Things moved outside in the darkness. She heard roars and screams that made her blood run cold. Something scratched at the entrance, but the opening was too small for it to enter. When dawn finally came, Zara's throat was raw with thirst, and her stomach cramped with hunger. She limped back to the stream and drank again. She needed food, but everything around her was alien and potentially deadly. She remembered her tutors teaching her about survival during royal education. The lessons had seemed pointless at the time. Now she desperately tried to recall what they had said. Look for plants that birds or animals eat. Avoid anything with a strong smell. Test small amounts before eating more. Zara spent the day searching near her cave. She found a bush with purple berries that small flying creatures were eating. She picked one and touched it to her lips. No burning sensation. She touched it to her tongue. Bitter but not painful. She ate 3 and waited. An hour passed with no ill effects. She gathered more and brought them back to the cave. The berries helped, but she was still hungry. She needed protein. She tried to catch the small flying creatures, but they were too fast. She found insects under rocks and logs. They were disgusting, but she forced herself to eat them. Her survival depended on setting aside her royal upbringing. Days blurred together. Zara established a routine. She woke at dawn and checked the area around her cave. She gathered berries and caught insects. She drank from the stream. She reinforced the cave entrance with branches and rocks. She practiced using her energy manipulation efficiently, creating small amounts of heat to stay warm at night. Her formal robes were in tatters. She tore away the most damaged parts and used the fabric to bind her injured ankle. The jewels she pried off and hid in the cave. They were worthless here, but they reminded her of who she was. After 2 weeks, Zara had lost weight and her skin had lost some of its glow. Her crystalline hair was tangled and dirty. Her hands were covered in scratches and calluses. But she was alive and she was learning. She began to understand the forest's rhythms. The predators hunted mostly at night. The prey animals moved in patterns. The weather changed quickly, with sudden violent storms that could last for hours. One morning she heard a new sound, a distant explosion that echoed through the forest. She climbed a tree, ignoring the pain in her hands, and looked toward the sound. In the distance, she saw a column of black smoke rising above the canopy. Something had crashed. Another ship. Someone else was on this planet. Zara's first instinct was to run toward it, but caution held her back. It could be another Valkyrie ship. It could be her father's soldiers coming to finish what the exile had started. Or it could be something else entirely. She decided to wait. She would watch and see what emerged from that crash site. Meanwhile, Jake Martinez dragged himself from the wreckage of his ship. The Wanderer was completely destroyed. The crash had been violent and sudden. One moment he was charting the planet's surface, the next his engines had exploded and he was falling. He had managed to trigger the emergency landing protocols, but they had only slowed his descent. The ship had torn through the canopy and plowed into the forest floor. He was lucky to be alive. Jake checked himself for injuries. A few bruises and a cut on his forehead, but nothing serious. His survival training had kicked in automatically during the crash. Now he needed to assess his situation. The Wanderer's main systems were dead. The distress beacon was crushed. His long-range communications array was scattered across 100 yards of forest. He was alone on an uncharted planet with no way to call for help. But Jake had been in tough situations before. He had survived winter in the Alaskan wilderness with nothing but a knife. He had lived for 3 months in the Amazon studying indigenous survival techniques. He was a specialist in staying alive where others would die. He salvaged what he could from the wreck. His survival pack was intact, containing a first aid kit, water purification tablets, a multi-tool, rope, and emergency rations. He also recovered a small laser cutter, useful for starting fires and cutting through obstacles. His sidearm had survived, along with 2 magazines of ammunition. Jake set up a temporary camp near the wreck and began to plan. He needed water, shelter, and food. Then he needed to figure out how to get off this planet. The distress beacon was broken, but maybe he could repair it, or build something new from the ship's components. As the sun set on his first day, Jake sat by a small fire and ate one of his ration bars. The forest around him was alive with sounds. He recognized some of the animal calls from his years of experience, but others were completely alien. He was not afraid. Fear was just a signal that you needed to be alert. Jake had learned long ago how to turn fear into focus. What he did not know was that in a cave 3 miles away, an alien princess was watching the glow of his fire and trying to decide if he was her salvation or her doom. Zara watched the stranger's camp for 3 days. She moved carefully through the forest using the skills she had painfully learned over the past weeks. The creature that had crashed here was different from any Velkari she had seen. It was smaller, with only 2 eyes and strange pale skin that changed colors in the sunlight. She noticed how efficiently it moved. It built a shelter from branches and leaves. It caught fish from the stream using a clever trap made of rocks and sticks. It made fire without using any energy manipulation at all. This puzzled Zara greatly. How could any intelligent being survive without telepathy or energy powers? But she kept her distance. She could not risk being discovered, especially if this creature was dangerous or connected to her father somehow. On the 4th day, everything changed. Zara had gone to the stream to gather water as she did every morning. Her container was a large leaf that she had learned to fold into a cup shape. It was not perfect, but it worked. She knelt by the water and dipped the leaf in. She did not see the creature until it was too late. It emerged from the reeds on the opposite bank. At first, Zara thought it was a log or a rock. Then it moved. The creature was long and low to the ground with 6 legs and a thick armored body. Its head was wide and flat, and when it opened its mouth, Zara saw rows of curved teeth. But the teeth were not what made her scream. It was the sacs under the creature's jaw that suddenly inflated. The creature made a hissing sound and sprayed a stream of liquid directly at her face. Zara threw herself backward, but not fast enough. The liquid hit her shoulder and neck. Immediately, burning pain exploded across her skin. She screamed and stumbled away from the stream. The creature hissed again and began moving toward her, its body rippling as it crossed the water. Zara ran. Pain radiated from where the venom had touched her. Her vision blurred. She tried to use her energy manipulation to burn the venom away, but she could not focus through the pain. Her legs felt weak. She made it perhaps 50 yards before she collapsed. Her shoulder was on fire. She could feel the venom spreading through her bloodstream. Her 4 eyes began to lose focus. The forest spun around her. She tried to crawl, but her limbs would not obey. All she could think was that this was a stupid way to die. She had survived her father's banishment, learned to live in this hostile forest only to be killed by a random animal. Her vision went dark. Jake was checking his fish traps when he heard the scream. It was high-pitched and clearly not from any animal he had encountered so far. He grabbed his sidearm and ran toward the sound. He found her lying near the stream, her body twitching. For a moment, Jake just stared. He had never seen an alien before. Humanity had only recently developed faster-than-light travel, and first contact had not yet occurred. At least not officially, but there was no mistaking what lay before him. She was humanoid in shape with 2 arms and 2 legs, but that was where the similarity ended. Her skin was blue and seemed to emit a faint glow. She had 4 eyes, currently closed. Her hair looked like it was made of crystal or glass. She wore rags that might once have been fine clothing, and she was dying. Jake's training kicked in immediately. He dropped to his knees beside her and checked for breathing. Shallow but present. Pulse was rapid and weak. He could see a wet patch on her shoulder that looked like a chemical burn. The skin around it was turning dark purple. Venom. Something had sprayed or bitten her. Jake had his field medical kit in his pack. He pulled it out and found the broad-spectrum antitoxin injector. It was designed for Earth-based venoms, but it might help. If it did nothing, she would die anyway. He pressed the injector against her neck where he could see a pulse point and triggered it. The device hissed as it delivered the medicine. Then he pulled out antiseptic and bandages. He cleaned the burn area as gently as he could and covered it with a sterile pad. The alien's eyes fluttered open. All 4 of them. Jake found himself looking into eyes that swirled with colors he could not name. She made a sound, something between a hiss and a word. Her hand moved weakly, and suddenly Jake felt pressure inside his head. He jerked back, grabbing his temple. What was that? It felt like someone had tried to push into his thoughts. The sensation faded quickly, and the alien's hand dropped. She was too weak to do whatever she had been attempting. Easy, Jake said softly, using the same tone he would use with an injured animal. I am not going to hurt you. You are safe. She could not understand his words, but maybe his tone would communicate something. He kept his movement slow and deliberate as he finished bandaging her wound. Then he carefully lifted her. She was lighter than he expected. He could feel her body trembling. Jake carried her back to his camp. He laid her down in his shelter and covered her with his emergency thermal blanket. He built up the fire and set water to boil. Then he sat back and watched her, his mind racing. An alien. A real alien. and she was clearly intelligent and in trouble. The rags she wore had once been fine clothes. There were remnants of jewels and intricate embroidery. She was not some primitive native. She was from an advanced civilization. So what was she doing alone in this forest, wearing rags and obviously starving? Zara woke slowly. Her shoulder still hurt, but the burning had faded to a dull throb. She was warm, warmer than she had been in weeks. She opened her eyes and saw fabric above her. Not her cave. Where was she? Memory returned in a rush. The creature, the venom, collapsing, and then someone had found her. She turned her head and saw him sitting by a fire. The stranger from the crashed ship. He was looking at her with an expression she could not read. His face was so strange, with only 2 eyes and no glow to his skin. Zara tried to sit up, but dizziness forced her back down. The stranger moved quickly, making soothing sounds. He picked up a container and brought it to her lips. Water. She drank gratefully. He set the container aside and held up his hands, palms out. Zara recognized the gesture. It was universal. No weapons, no threat. She tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. She tried her telepathy instead, reaching out gently to touch his mind. Nothing. It was like reaching for something and finding only air. She could sense that he was there, that he was intelligent and conscious, but she could not connect to his thoughts. How was that possible? The stranger seemed unaffected by her attempt. He pointed to himself. "Jake," he said clearly. Then he pointed to her and raised his eyebrows in question. He wanted to know her name. Zara understood. She tried again to speak. "Zara," she managed, her voice rough. "Zara," he repeated, nodding. Then he pointed to her shoulder and made a gesture like something spraying. He was asking what had attacked her. Zara tried to describe it with hand gestures. Long body, many legs, spitting venom. Jake nodded like he understood. He stood and walked to a flat piece of metal salvaged from his ship. Using a piece of charcoal from the fire, he drew a simple picture of a creature that matched what had attacked her. Zara nodded emphatically. Yes, that was it. Jake made a note in what looked like a datapad, though it was crude compared to Velkari technology. He was documenting the local wildlife, a surveyor or explorer then. Over the next hour, they established a basic communication system using drawings and gestures. Jake gave her more water and a strange dry bar of compressed food. It tasted terrible, but it was protein and calories. Zara ate every bite. She studied him as she ate. He moved with confidence and purpose. His camp was well organized despite being made from salvaged materials and forest debris. He had turned the crash site into a functioning base. This creature, this Jake, was a survivor. When night fell, Jake gestured that she should sleep. He would keep watch. Zara was too exhausted to argue. She pulled the thermal blanket around herself and closed her eyes. For the first time since her banishment, she felt safe. Jake sat by the fire and watched the alien sleep. Zara. That was her name. He had so many questions. Where did she come from? Why was she alone? How did she end up here? But those questions could wait. Right now, he needed to keep her alive and figure out how to communicate better. He had some basic xenolinguistics training from his surveyor courses. The fundamentals of language learning were universal. Point and name. Build a vocabulary. Look for grammar patterns. He also needed to be practical. His food supplies were limited. He had been rationing carefully, but now he had 2 mouths to feed. He would need to increase his hunting and gathering efforts. The forest presented other dangers too. If that venom creature had attacked Zara, it might attack him. He needed to learn more about the local predators and how to avoid them. Jake added another log to the fire and settled back against a tree. His life had just become much more complicated, but he found himself glad for the company. Even alien company was better than being alone. The next morning, Zara woke feeling stronger. The antitoxin had worked, and her body's natural healing abilities had taken over. The burn on her shoulder was already fading. Jake gave her more food and water, then started the language lessons. He pointed to objects and said their names: rock, tree, fire, water. Zara repeated each word carefully. Her mouth struggled with some of the sounds, but she managed. By midday, they had a vocabulary of perhaps 50 words. It was not much, but it was a start. Jake then showed her his fish traps and how they... 3 weeks passed, and the forest became less hostile with each day. Jake and Zara fell into a rhythm of cooperation that surprised them both. Every morning began with language lessons while they ate breakfast. Zara's grasp of English improved rapidly. Her telepathic abilities, while unable to read Jake's thoughts directly, seemed to help her understand language patterns faster than any human could. "You learn quick," Jake said one morning as they prepared to check the hunting snares he had set the previous day. "Velkari minds are made for learning," Zara explained, her accent still thick but her words clear. "We connect thoughts, share knowing. Language is pattern. I see pattern fast." Jake found this fascinating. "So your people can read minds?" "With other Velkari, yes. Thoughts flow like water between us. But you—" She tapped her head in frustration. "You are wall solid. I feel you there but cannot enter." "Maybe that is a good thing," Jake said with a slight smile. "Humans value privacy. We like keeping our thoughts to ourselves." Zara considered this. In Velkari culture, mental privacy was almost unheard of. The ability to share thoughts was what separated them from animals. But she was beginning to see that Jake's people had developed differently, and that did not make them lesser. The snares held 2 rabbit-like creatures with 6 legs and purple fur. Jake showed Zara how to quickly and humanely kill them, then how to skin and clean them for cooking. She watched closely, asking questions. "On my world, servants do this," she admitted. "I never learned to prepare food. Never need to." "You are learning now," Jake said. "Survival is not about what you knew before. It is about what you can learn and adapt to." Back at camp, Jake taught Zara how to cook the meat properly. He explained about bacteria and parasites that could make them sick, and how heat killed these dangers. Zara shared what she knew about the plants she had found, and together they experimented with combinations to make their meals more varied. During these quiet moments, they talked. Zara slowly opened up about her life in the Velkari Empire. She described the vast cities that floated in the sky, held up by energy manipulation. She told him about the rigid hierarchy of her society, where everyone had a place determined by birth and telepathic strength. "My father is emperor," she explained one evening. "I am his only child. I should be heir, but he wanted me to marry Draxel. This man, this monster, he destroyed colonies, killed millions of people who refused to submit to empire rule. My father called it bringing order. I called it murder." Jake listened without interrupting. He had seen enough of human history to know that power often corrupted, that empires were built on the suffering of those who resisted. "I said no," Zara continued. "In our culture, to refuse the emperor's command is unthinkable, especially for daughter. So he sent me here to die or to learn obedience." Her 4 eyes met his too. "I will never be obedient. I will die first." "You will not die," Jake said firmly. "We will get off this planet. Both of us." "You have much faith," Zara said quietly. "I have experience. I have survived situations that should have killed me. The key is to never give up and to use every advantage you have." In return, Jake told Zara about Earth. He described oceans that covered most of the planet, mountains that touched the sky, and deserts where no rain fell for years. He told her about the diversity of human cultures, how people across the world had developed different languages, customs, and beliefs. "We spent most of our history fighting each other," Jake admitted. "Wars over resources, religion, territory. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times. But we learned, slowly, painfully, we learned that cooperation was better than conflict. That diversity made us stronger, not weaker." "Your people value the individual," Zara observed. "Each person matters." "Yes, it took us a long time to really believe that. We had slavery, oppression, rulers who treated people as property, like your father wants to treat you. But we fought against it. We built systems to protect individual rights. It is not perfect, but it is better." These conversations changed something in Zara. She had been raised to believe that the Velkari way was the only way, that their telepathic empire was the pinnacle of civilization. But Jake showed her a different possibility, a society where people could disagree, could choose their own path, and yet still work together. The practical partnership continued to grow. Jake taught Zara how to track animals, reading signs in the dirt and on vegetation. He showed her how to predict weather by watching cloud patterns and animal behavior. He explained the principles of simple machines, leverage and force distribution, concepts that seemed basic to him, but were revelations to Zara, who had always relied on energy manipulation for heavy work. Zara, in turn, helped Jake understand the planet better. Her species had a natural ability to sense living energy, which let her detect creatures before they became threats. She could also manipulate her body temperature to stay warm without building fires, though she was teaching herself to conserve this ability since food was limited. Her energy manipulation proved invaluable for Jake's repair work on the ship. She could weld metal, cut through tough materials, and even generate electricity for brief periods. Together they made progress on salvaging components from the Wanderer that might eventually become a new distress beacon. One morning, nearly a month after they had met, Jake was teaching Zara how to make rope from plant fibers when she suddenly went rigid. Her skin flickered, the glow pulsing erratically. "What is wrong?" Jake asked, immediately alert. "Ship," Zara whispered. "In orbit?" "I feel their thoughts." Velkari thoughts. "They search for something." Jake's blood ran cold. "Searching for you?" Zara closed her eyes, concentrating. "I cannot tell too far, but they will scan planet. They will find my energy signature. How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe less if they focus search." Jake stood quickly. "Then we need to move now. Grab only essentials." They worked rapidly, packing survival gear and tools into bags. Jake buried the most obvious signs of their camp. Zara used her energy manipulation to burn away footprints and disturb the vegetation patterns. "Will that hide us?" Jake asked as they prepared to leave. "No," Zara said honestly. "If they send hunters, they will find me. My telepathic signature is unique. But we can make it harder. Buy time." They moved deeper into the forest, away from the crash site and Zara's original cave. Jake chose terrain that would be difficult for aerial scans, areas where the canopy was thickest and rock formations would interfere with sensors. As they walked, Zara tried to explain what they faced. Velkari hunters are trained warriors. They have advanced weapons and armor. They can share thoughts in battle, coordinating perfectly. And they will have one goal: kill me. Why kill you? I thought your father just exiled you. Exile was punishment, but now I have survived too long. I am embarrassment. Easier to announce my tragic death than admit failure. Jake thought quickly as they navigated through dense undergrowth. Your hunters are trained to fight other Velkari, right? Other telepaths with energy powers? Yes, why? Because I'm not Velkari. I do not have powers. I do not show up on telepathic senses. Jake smiled grimly. They will not be looking for me. That is our advantage. They found a new hiding spot in a rocky area where a small waterfall created cover. Jake set up a minimal camp while Zara tried to suppress her telepathic signature as much as possible. It was like trying not to breathe, she explained. She could manage it for short periods, but not indefinitely. That night they saw lights in the sky, a Velkari patrol ship entering the atmosphere. Jake watched through his surveyor binoculars as the sleek vessel descended. It was beautiful and terrifying, all smooth curves and glowing panels. 3 days, Zara said quietly. They will land tomorrow, search for 2 days. If they find nothing, they may leave. Or they may bring in more ships, Jake countered. We need a plan beyond just hiding. What plan? They have technology, weapons, armor. We have, Zara gestured at their crude camp. We have knowledge of this terrain. We have the element of surprise. And we have me, someone they cannot detect. Jake looked at her seriously. I have survived by being smarter, not stronger. I can do it again. Jake, these are trained killers, why, so was I once. Jake's voice was flat. Before I became a surveyor, I spent 6 years in Earth's military. Special operations. I know how to fight against superior forces. You do not win by being stronger. You win by being unpredictable and by making the environment your weapon. Zara studied this human who had shown her nothing but kindness. She kept forgetting that his species had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare. Humans might not have telepathy or energy powers, but they had something else, a talent for turning disadvantages into advantages. Tell me your plan, she said. Jake smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted prey. First, we need to know their patterns, how they search, where they focus. Then we make them paranoid. Small things at first, signs that something is watching them. Hunters are confident because of their powers. We need to shake that confidence. Psychological warfare, Zara said, understanding dawning. Exactly. Make them doubt. Make them angry. Angry people make mistakes. Then when they are off balance, we strike. You speak of killing them. Jake's expression was serious. Only if necessary. I would prefer to disable. The Velkari hunters landed at dawn. Zara felt their presence like pressure behind her eyes. 5 of them, their thoughts bright and sharp like polished blades. She crouched next to Jake in the bushes overlooking their landing site and watched. The ship was smaller than a transport but bristled with weapons. Its surface shimmered with energy shields. As the ramp lowered, 5 figures emerged wearing sleek armor that pulsed with built-in power systems. They moved with fluid confidence, their weapons held ready but casual. That is Commander Vextar, Zara whispered, pointing to the leader. He was taller than the others, his armor marked with symbols of rank. He trained me in combat when I was young. He is dangerous and very smart. Jake studied them through his binoculars. The armor looked tough but not impenetrable. The weapons were energy-based, probably deadly, but requiring power cells. Most importantly, the hunters moved like soldiers who had never faced serious opposition, confident to the point of arrogance. They are scanning for your telepathic signature? Jake asked. Yes. The ship has sensors, but the hunters are also searching with their minds. They will sweep in a pattern, probably starting from my old cave. Good. That gives us time. Jake lowered the binoculars. Stay here and stay hidden. I need to set some surprises. For the next several hours, Jake worked. He moved through the forest like a ghost, using every trick he had learned in hostile territories. He set simple but effective traps along the routes the hunters would likely take. Snares designed to trip and tangle. Deadfalls that would drop logs from above. Pits covered with leaves and branches. But the physical traps were just the beginning. Jake also left signs. A footprint here, too obvious to be accidental. Broken branches there, arranged in patterns. Scratches on trees that might be writing or might be random. He wanted the hunters to feel watched, to question what they were seeing. The first hunter found one of Zara's old campsites that afternoon. Jake watched from concealment as the warrior examined the area. The Velkari was thorough, scanning with both technology and telepathy. He found the remains of the fire, the marks where Zara had slept, the crude tools she had made. The hunter reported back to his team using a communication device. Jake could not understand the words, but he understood the tone. They had confirmed the princess was alive. Now they just needed to find her. That night, Jake made his first real move. He waited until the hunters had set up camp near their ship. They had posted one guard while the others slept inside portable shelters. The guard was confident, scanning the forest with sensors but clearly not expecting trouble. Jake crept close, moving between heartbeats, freezing whenever the guard's attention shifted his direction. He had done this dozens of times in training and twice in real combat. His breathing was slow and controlled. His movements were fluid and silent. When he was close enough, he threw a rock far to the left of the camp. The guard spun toward the sound, weapon raised. While his attention was focused there, Jake used his laser cutter on its lowest setting to silently slice through several equipment cases stacked near the ship. He did not take anything. He just wanted them to know someone had been there. Then he vanished back into the forest. The next morning, Commander Vextar stared at the sliced equipment cases with narrow eyes. His team gathered around him. It is not the princess, one hunter said. She would have used energy manipulation. This was cut with a tool. Scanners detected nothing, another added. No life signs approached the camp. Vexitar touched the clean cuts. Technology we do not recognize. There is someone else on this planet. Someone who can avoid our sensors. Impossible, the first hunter scoffed. This is a forbidden world. No one comes here except for exile or punishment. Yet the evidence is here, Vextar said coldly. Someone cut our supplies open and left without taking anything. This was a message. We are being watched. From her hiding spot, Zara felt the hunter's thoughts become confused and angry. Jake's plan was working. The Velkari were used to overwhelming force and telepathic coordination. They had no experience with guerrilla tactics or psychological warfare. Over the next day, Jake escalated his campaign. One hunter tripped a snare that left him hanging upside down from a tree for 20 minutes before his team found him. Another fell into a pit trap, suffering a sprained ankle. None of the injuries were serious, but each incident made the hunters more paranoid. Jake also left disturbing signs. He arranged rocks in patterns near their camp. He hung strange symbols made from bones and vines in trees where they would be seen. He made sounds in the darkness, just at the edge of hearing. Animal calls that were almost right, but subtly wrong. The hunters began to argue among themselves. Zara could feel their mental link becoming strained. Fear and frustration were bleeding through their disciplined thoughts. The princess must have found help, one hunter insisted. Some native intelligence we do not know about. Or she died and something else lives here, another suggested. Something that hunts Velkari. Commander Vextar silenced them. We complete the mission. We find the princess and eliminate her. Then we leave this cursed world. But even his thoughts were uncertain now. On the third day, Jake led them into his trap. He had found a narrow canyon with steep walls and only one entrance. He left obvious signs leading into it, including a piece of fabric torn from Zara's old robes. The hunters followed the trail like predators chasing wounded prey. Inside the canyon, Zara sat in plain sight. She had suppressed her telepathic signature as much as possible until now, but as the hunters entered, she let it flare. Come and get me, it said. The 5 hunters rushed into the canyon, weapons ready. Vextar led them, his face grim with determination. They spread out in a tactical formation, expecting an attack. What they did not expect was Jake. He had positioned himself on the canyon rim with several logs braced on supports. As the hunters passed beneath him, he triggered the first deadfall. A massive log rolled down the slope, forcing the hunters to scatter. 2 more logs followed from different angles. The hunters dove for cover, their confident formation broken. Energy blasts filled the air as they fired at threats both real and imagined. In the chaos, Jake slid down a rope into the canyon behind them. He moved fast, using the laser cutter to slice through the power packs on 2 hunters' backs. The armor went dead immediately, leaving them vulnerable. Before they could react, Jake had vanished back into the rocks. Vextar shouted orders, trying to restore discipline. But his hunters were panicking now, firing at shadows. One hunter's weapon overheated from constant use and shut down. Another tripped in the chaos and fell hard, and through it all, Jake moved like a phantom. He appeared just long enough to disable equipment or cut straps, then disappeared again. The hunters could not coordinate against an enemy they could not sense telepathically or track with their technology. Finally, Vextar made a decision. He signaled retreat. The hunters fell back toward the canyon entrance, supporting their injured and watching every shadow. Jake let them go, appearing on the canyon rim to make sure they saw him. A human figure, standing tall, holding a simple knife. The message was clear. Leave now, or this will get worse. The hunters made it back to their ship. Vextar called for an immediate departure, but one of the hunters argued. We cannot report failure. The Emperor will punish us. Better punishment than death, Vextar said coldly. Whatever is on this planet, it is beyond our mission parameters. I will report that the princess died from the planet's dangers. We return to the Empire. As the ship prepared to launch, a final surprise awaited them. Jake had planted explosives from his ship's emergency stores near their landing site, not enough to destroy their vessel, but enough to damage it seriously. As they lifted off, the explosion ripped through their port engine. The ship lurched and spun, crash landing half a mile from its original position. It hit hard, but remained intact. However, it was clearly going nowhere without major repairs. Jake and Zara approached the crash site carefully. The hunters emerged from the ship, battered and angry but alive. When they saw Jake and Zara standing together, realization dawned on their faces. Human, Vextar said in accented but clear English. You are human. I am, Jake confirmed, his weapon pointed at the ground but ready. And she is under my protection? Impossible. Humans are barely spacefaring. You should not be here. Yet here I am. Jake's voice was steady. Here is the situation. Your ship is damaged. You cannot leave. I have supplies and knowledge of this planet. You can either accept help and we all survive until rescue comes, or we can keep fighting and probably all die. Your choice. Vextar looked at his injured team, at the damaged ship, and at the confident human who had outfought 5 elite warriors. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. Why would you help us? We came to kill the princess. Because I am not like you, Jake said simply. I do not kill when I do not have to. I won. The fight is over. Now we survive together. Zara stepped forward. Commander Vexitar, you trained me. You know I spoke truth about Draxel, about my father's injustice. Will you return me to execution? Or will you choose honor? Vextar stared at his former student. His thoughts were turbulent, conflicting loyalties tearing at him. Finally, he made his decision. We will accept help, he said quietly, but the Empire will send another. The first week of cooperation was tense. The Velkari hunters kept to themselves, working on their damaged ship during the day and sleeping in shifts at night. They accepted the food and water Jake provided but spoke little. Trust had to be earned, not given. Jake understood this. He had worked with hostile forces before during peacekeeping missions. The key was consistency and patience. Every morning he brought supplies to their camp. Every evening he checked if they needed anything. He never pushed for conversation, but he was always available. Zara struggled more with the situation. These warriors had come to kill her. Commander Vextar had once been her instructor, someone she respected. Now he avoided meeting her eyes. The betrayal cut deep. Give him time, Jake said one night as they sat by their fire. He is facing everything he thought he knew being wrong. That is not an easy thing. He chose duty over what was right, Zara said bitterly. He chose duty because that is what he was taught to choose. But he is questioning now. I see it in how he watches us, how he listens when I explain things. Change does not happen instantly. Slowly, the barriers began to break down. It started with one of the younger hunters named Krenal. He cut himself badly while working on the ship's hull. His medical supplies were depleted from treating injuries during Jake's attacks. He came to their camp, reluctant and embarrassed, asking for help. Jake treated the wound without comment, showing Krenal how to properly clean and bandage it. He explained about infection and healing, using simple words the Velkari could understand. Krenal listened carefully, asking questions. By the end, some of the hostility had left his eyes. The next day, Krenal brought a salvaged power cell that Jake could use in his own repair work. It was a small gesture but significant, an exchange of help. The beginning of actual cooperation. Commander Vextar noticed the change. That evening, he came to Jake and Zara's camp for the first time. He stood at the edge of the firelight, his posture stiff and formal. May I sit? He asked in heavily accented English. Yes, Jake said, gesturing to a log they used as a bench. Vextar sat carefully, maintaining distance. For a long moment he said nothing. Then you defeated us. 5 trained warriors with advanced weapons and armor. You defeated us with rocks and rope and knowledge. I had the advantage, Jake said. I knew the terrain. You did not. It was more than that. Vextar looked at Jake directly. You understood us. You knew we would be confident. You used that confidence against us. That requires intelligence and planning. It requires understanding psychology. Jake nodded. In war, the mind is the most important weapon. Technology and power are useful, but they are not enough if you cannot think flexibly. The Velkari Empire has conquered 12 star systems, Vextar said slowly. We have telepathy. We have energy manipulation. We have weapons that can destroy cities. Yet you, one human with primitive tools, defeated us completely. Because you relied on your advantages and forgot that advantages can become weaknesses, Jake explained. Your telepathy made you dependent on sensing opponents. When you faced someone you could not sense, you were blind. Your confidence made you careless. Your coordination through mental links meant that when I broke your formation, you fell apart. Vextar absorbed this. You are warrior. You speak of war as one who has experience. I was a soldier once, Jake admitted. I saw combat. I learned that the side that adapts fastest usually wins. Not the strongest side. Not the side with the best weapons. The side that can learn and change, Zara spoke up. Is that not what you taught me, Commander? That rigidity in combat leads to defeat? Vextar finally looked at her. I did teach you that. I taught many things that I myself failed to remember. Princess, I must apologize. I came here to kill you because I was ordered to. I did not question if the order was just. That was wrong. The admission hung in the air. Zara felt emotions warring inside her. Anger at the betrayal. Relief that he acknowledged it. Hope that he might truly change. Why do you question now? She asked quietly. Because I have seen something I did not think existed, Vextar said. I have seen honor in an enemy. This human defeated us and then he offered help. He could have killed us all. We were injured, our ship destroyed, our equipment damaged. Instead, he chose mercy. The Empire does not teach mercy. The Empire teaches that power determines right. But power without wisdom is just brutality, Jake said. My people learned that lesson through centuries of mistakes and suffering. We had empires too. We had rulers who believed they had the right to control others. It took revolutions and wars and countless deaths before we understood that every person deserves freedom and respect. Over the following weeks, these conversations continued. The hunters finished repairing their ship enough to make it livable, and they began contributing to the shared camp. They shared Velkari technology and knowledge. Jake and Zara taught them human concepts and survival skills. Krenal became particularly interested in human history. He listened intently as Jake described Earth's democratic systems, checks on power and individual rights. These ideas were revolutionary to the young warrior who had never questioned the Empire's hierarchical structure. But without telepathic coordination, how do you organize society? Krenal asked one day. Through communication, debate, and compromise, Jake explained. We vote on important decisions. Leaders are chosen by the people and can be removed by the people. It is messy and slow sometimes, but it prevents any one person from having too much power. The Emperor would call that chaos. The Emperor would call it a threat to his power. Zara interjected. That is different from chaos. What Jake describes is order built on consent rather than force. These discussions fascinated Commander Vextar. He began to share his own doubts about the Empire. How the military was often sent to crush peaceful protests. How resources were hoarded by the elite while colonies starved. How the Emperor's paranoia had grown worse each year, leading to purges and executions. Many in the military questioned privately, Vextar admitted one night. But to speak openly is death. So we obey and hope things will improve. They never do. Then someone needs to speak up, Jake said. Change requires courage. It requires people willing to risk themselves for something better. Easy words from someone who will leave this planet and never face the Empire's wrath, one of the other hunters said, bitterly. You are right, Jake acknowledged. I will leave eventually. This is not my fight, but I have seen enough tyranny in my life to know that it only ends when people decide enough is enough. I cannot force you to act. I can only tell you that freedom is worth fighting for. 5 months after the hunters had arrived, 2 ships appeared in orbit. One was Velkari, coming to check on the hunter team that had stopped reporting. The other was human, a rescue vessel responding to the distress signal Jake had finally managed to repair and activate. Jake, Zara, and the hunters gathered to decide what would happen next. The Empire will send me back to my father, Zara said. They will report that you found me alive, Commander. Vextar shook his head. I will report that we found no trace of you. That you perished in the forests. If the Empire believes you are dead, you are free. But they will question your failure to find a body, Zara argued. Then we will make a body, Vextar said. We have tissue samples from your medical records. We can fabricate evidence. The Empire will believe what it wants to believe. Why would you risk this? Zara asked. If they discover the lie, you will be executed. Vextar smiled grimly. Because I have made my decision, Princess. I return to the Empire, but not as a loyal soldier. I return as a revolutionary. These months have shown me that change is possible. That the Empire's way is not the only way. I will find others who think as I do. We will build a resistance. That is incredibly dangerous, Jake warned. Yes. But you were right. Freedom is worth fighting for. Vextar turned to his team. I do not order you to follow me in this. Each must choose. The 4 hunters looked at each other. Krenal spoke first. I choose to fight for something better. One by one, the others agreed. Jake felt pride and concern in equal measure. These warriors were risking everything based on conversations around campfires and demonstrations of human resilience. It was inspiring and terrifying. The plan was set. The hunters would return to the Empire with falsified evidence of Zara's death. They would resume their duties while secretly recruiting others to their cause. It would be slow and dangerous work, but revolutions always were. Zara faced a harder choice. The human rescue ship offered her asylum. She could live among humans safe from her father's reach, but leaving felt like abandonment. You can do more from safety, Jake told her. If you return, you die. If you live, you can help coordinate the resistance. The humans would help. We believe in supporting freedom movements. You speak as if you will be involved, Zara said. Jake smiled. I am a surveyor, but I used to be a soldier, and I have always had trouble walking away from a good cause. Besides, someone needs to teach your rebels about guerrilla tactics and asymmetric warfare. Might as well be me. The day of departure came. The hunters returned to their repaired ship with Zara's falsified remains. Before they left, Vextar approached Jake one final time. I have led warriors in battle, the commander said. I have trained them,